All right. We are back. Thank you, friends, family, all of those watching, listening, digesting, observing, absorbing the information here. If you're watching this here, you'll notice my background's a little bit different. I'm in my proper office today. The camera wasn't working for a while, so I had to kind of reformat everything and put that back together, aside from using my laptop in the dining room. So anyway, I want to welcome you back today. We've got a dear friend who I've known for only a short while, but we've connected through social media, kind of put the call out to do this, look for more interesting people that we can hear their story a little bit about how their life has been shaped by their faith, strength of faith, whatever it is, lack of faith, different roller coasters of it throughout life. We've got Ed Carrick on with us today. Again, like I usually say, I could give you a 6-minute glowing bio intro that makes it look like I've known you for 25 years. And everybody's going to be like, man, Jeff knows everything about everybody. It's not the case, man. I'm really not that cool. So I always say I'm going to turn it over and get the word directly from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So Ed, why don't you tell us, and thanks for being on the show today here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about, kind of what shaped you, a little bit about your history and kind of where you are now. We'll kind of open up. We'll see where the questions and conversation takes us. So thanks again for being on here today. Welcome.
All right. Yeah. Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. So I grew up in a small suburb right outside of New Orleans. Public school. After school, joined the military. After I got out the military, went to college while still being in the National Guard version of the military. Went through engineering school. As I was growing up, we attended church every Sunday, did our thing, and then went on about our lives. And there's been various times where I was very close with the church and with spirituality, and there were times where it wasn't as close throughout all those years. Currently, I own two small engineering firms right outside of New Orleans. I have a family of I have a wife and 3 kids, all 3 teenagers, which is, don't ever do that if you get the opportunity. Don't ever have 3 teenagers at one time. But anyway, that's kind of a brief background as to where I am at the moment.
All right. So you got 3 teens right now. You got boys, girls, a mix of both?
The oldest is a girl. She's a senior in high school. And then the other 2 are boys and also in high school and junior high.
Okay. All right. So I'll do my best not to have 3 of them at the same time. And I guess that's word to the wise for anybody else listening, huh?
Yeah. Just a quick tip.
Nice. So you've pretty much been in Louisiana your entire life, aside from probably your military experience, like born, raised in Louisiana. You're back in Louisiana. You said, 30, 40 miles north of New Orleans right now?
That's right. Yeah, I did. At one point in time, before we had kids, my wife and I moved to Houston, Texas, right outside of Houston, just to really just because we could. We had some friends and family over there, and we said, hey, let's see what else is out there. So after we started having kids, we dragged them back to good old Louisiana.
All right. How long did you live in Houston?
It was about 5 years, from 2000 to 2005.
Okay. And that was really, you said, just because we could, we had friends out there. Is that a place you'd want to go back to and live some point in your life? Or are you kind of like, hey, I did it, been there, done it, we're good?
I like it a lot. I feel like I'm extremely rooted here. I don't feel like I'll ever move from here again.
Okay.
I still have a brother who lives outside of Houston. So I like to visit him when I get the chance.
So you get to dip in and out from time to time. It's like being an uncle or an aunt. You get to see the relatives every once in a while, and you get to give them back at the end of the day.
Yeah, we had a little glitch there on the audio.
Okay. So I was saying, it's like you get to dip in and out every once in a while. You got family and relatives and stuff in Houston. You can kind of duck in when you want to, and then come back home when you're done. So.
Yeah. Largely, the brother I have who lives there, he and his wife. I travel a lot for work, and sometimes I find myself in their vicinity. So I'll schedule a couple of nights at their house along the way.
Very cool.
Works out pretty good. Yeah.
I want to jump into the military here. Obviously, people who go into the military, I've got no experience, but both of my brothers do. My entire family does, actually. Probably about 60% of them have military experience, whether it was Vietnam, Gulf War, post Gulf War, all that stuff, 9/11, everything. What was did you have a driving force that, I mean, as a child, you kind of said, hey, this is something I want to do? Or was it more of like as you got closer to graduating, trying to figure it out and saying, hey, this is a good option?
No, I was just about as surprised as anybody that I joined. I I was always really good in school, honor graduate type person. I was always going to be uh, going down the college route. That was never a question. What happened was in my later years in high school, I joined the soccer team early on, and then started hanging out with crowds of people who partied and had a lot of fun and played around and did crazy things, and kind of drifted a little away from my studies and kind of got off on the wrong track. And then, although I knew I was going to college, I graduated a little bit young. I was 17. I was on the younger side. And I just said, you know what? I'm just not ready to go back and study right now. I want a break. Well, a recruiter called me and said, hey, what are you doing after you graduate? I said, thinking about joining the Army. And then he knew he had me at that point. So that's kind of how it all went down. And then literally, what was it? I think it was like exactly 2 weeks after graduation, I was shipped out. So
wow.
Yeah,
that's quick. That mirrors, or my brother's story mirrors that, where I think he was a junior and said, hey, I want to be in the Air Force. What do I need to do to get there? It's a little bit different because he had already made up his mind, but it was, I mean, he graduated. Before I knew it, I don't even know that he had an open house, the graduation celebration, all that stuff. He was gone. He was in Lansing, and then, I didn't see him again for a couple of years or whatever. Probably about, I guess, whatever it is, basic training, drove down and saw him graduate, and then I didn't see him again for like 3 years. So it was just a bing, bang, boom, gone. So with that, you said you went to engineering school through the military. Was that something that you'd always had kind of a passion and a heart for, you felt kind of called to, or was that more of like, I'm good at these things? We took the ASVAB, we did, the testing, and they determined that was what I would excel at, kind of a thing?
No, that was extremely, that was not related to the military. That was kind of my calling throughout high school, I guess throughout my life. I did actually want to be a veterinarian first, and my college counselor said, well, you know what, you're really awesome at math. What he told me at the time was, there's so many veterinarians out there. It's a tough industry to break into. Plus you have to go to college for 8 years. And he kind of talked me into the engineering side and wanted to do something creative and that sort of thing. So it wasn't a big leap to go over to the engineering side of things.
Okay. All right. Very cool. You still have kind of every once in a while, kind of like, oh man, what if my path had been different and become a veterinarian? Or is that just far in your past?
Yeah, I say it's in my past. I mean, we have dogs and things like that, so that kind of takes care of that need. I actually feel like I would have been bored. I would have been bored as a veterinarian in hindsight, because there's, I guess to me, it looks like it's a repetitive, same old thing over and over again, and not a whole lot of expansion of the mind and creativity. So I think I did the right thing.
How does being an engineer fulfill that need for constant creativity? I'm not an engineer. I've never excelled at math. I'm about as ignorant on the topic as you can get, just on a personal choice, realizing that I suck at math. Like, how does that kind of keep you, for lack of a better term, entertained, as opposed to being a veterinarian and repetitive and all that stuff?
So we take on projects from people who need us to do something, and sometimes it's something we've never done before, and we're figuring it out on the fly. And at first it's a little bit overwhelming and it's a little bit frustrating, and finally you start, carving your way through the rock and the stone, and you open up the path, and finally when you get there toward the end, you start seeing the light, and you realize, hey, wow, this was a pretty cool effort that we went through, and we made it work.
Okay. And that's with performance engineering. That's your primary business. Now, that's, as you had mentioned prior to that. Tell us a little bit about that, because we're kind of flowing into it. Tell us about that business, kind of how you got started with that, post-military engineering school, all that stuff, and what your motivation was for that.
You broke up there, but I think I caught it. The high performance engineering start, was that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So when I went up back to Houston, when I was in Houston, 2000, 2005, I'm not sure how. I think I got influenced by some of my, by one of my bosses there, a couple of my bosses there. And I just started, I want to start a business bug. And in Houston, I said, well, man, maybe I could start like a little drafting company on the side, doing drafting, drawings, plans, things like that. At that time, I wasn't a licensed engineer, so I couldn't technically open an engineering firm. So I went and printed up these business cards, mechanical design, mechanical drafting, whatever it was, I forget. And tried to hand them out a little bit, and it went absolutely nowhere, which it shouldn't have, because I was full-time employed elsewhere, and I really had no clue what my plan was. And so when I came back to Louisiana in 2005, that bug was in me. And of course, I didn't have the means to do anything, start a company or anything like that, but I kept working for others. And, it's weird. I look back at it now and say, I wish I would have started my company 10 years earlier. But then I also say, I wasn't ready. The timing wasn't there. It happened when it had to happen. It happened when it was supposed to happen. But the last year or so that I worked for my most recent employer, I started putting all the pieces into place. Created the company name, actually got the LLC started, and so on. And then finally, when that company and I parted ways, it was almost like I had a running start. Although it was a very slow, fat person running start. Like I was running very, very slowly.
Like a casual jog.
Yeah, at best.
Okay. So was there a series of moments or things that kind of, as you were working with your past employer, you had the entrepreneurial bug, you wanted to get out and do your own thing. Was there a lack of certain things that you desired to have that led you to eventually move into that? From what I hear, a lot of entrepreneurs is time, control of my own money and that kind of thing. Was there stuff like that you finally said, now is the time? Or was it just like you got tired of working for somebody else and you're just like, whatever, I'm done talking about it, I'm going to do it?
Yeah. So not to spin anything bad on anyone else, but I would say that what I found consistently throughout my career of working for other people was that I wouldn't say every job or with every employer, every boss, but particularly with this last one, it became pretty apparent that a lot of us engineers were more or less, what's the word I'm looking for? Like peons. Maybe that's not the right word, but we were tools, and I felt like we were used as tools, and we didn't have a whole lot of autonomy. We did to some degree, but then not in other ways. And we couldn't really spread our wings and do, I felt, everything that we were capable of doing underneath the structure that they imposed on us. And that was really it for me.
Okay. All right. And going back and looking at the past then that led you up to that, working with your employer, then would you say your military experience kind of guided you in the direction too, and taught you a lot of things and said, I think I'm finally ready on this. I've got this, and I'm ready to just go. I'm tired of feeling like a peon and a tool. Did your military experience influence that in any way? Is what I'm trying to ask.
I would say, yeah. I never thought about that before, but here's a caveat to that. When people say, "Oh, you're military, you're very regimented, you're very boom, boom, everything's on time, you're very structured." Yeah, some people in the military are like that. I am not and never was. But what I did get from the military, of course, I was that way when I had to be when I was in the uniform to the best of my ability. But what I got from the military was there's nothing you can't do. it's not, can you do it? It's how can you do it? And that's kind of the biggest takeaway I ever got from the military.
So tell me about a big challenge here that you've had in your specific role right now and how you're dealing with it.
The biggest challenge is we're still a young company, still a small company. I'm caught up in what a lot of business owners are aware of. It's a situation where I'm doing too much of the nuts and bolts, too much of the production of our service, rather than being able to do more marketing or do more business development or do the things that help the company to grow. And part of that is I'm an engineer and we do engineering work. And so, a lot of us kind of get drawn to the stuff, and I'm working my way to get pulled out of that more and have some other people to fill in those gaps while I do the bigger picture items.
So you've already got people that you're going to delegate some responsibility to, or are you looking for some right now?
We have had some contract personnel in the past. We do have a couple now. I've interviewed 2 people already this week, and I have another one tomorrow to step in and do some of the technical work for us.
Awesome. Sounds like there's some growth and some expansion that is happening at the present time. So I've accidentally omitted your company. Tell us about it. Like, I know that you and I talked about it, the forensic engineering aspect of performance engineering. What can you tell us, our listeners, our viewers, about that? I guess without naming names, without getting too graphic, because it sounds like there's some stuff that you might experience on a daily basis that maybe others don't want to see or hear about.
The forensic engineering, you said?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. This seems to be your primary here.
Yeah, that's where we are trying to push more and more of our effort. So what it is forensic work. The word forensic, I didn't know this until I was already in the business for a couple of years, but it actually means argument, or it has to do with arguments, forensic, which is kind of, I found that interesting. We investigate different things that go wrong, physical things. Sometimes it could be an explosion at a chemical plant. It can be a crash, a vehicle crash. It could be something a little more mundane, like a water line froze and flooded a building when the ice thawed out. The larger part of what we do is investigate crashes, vehicle crashes. And typically we use a little bit of physics. We go out and measure skid marks, see how long they are. We look at the deformation on the vehicles, take measurements. We can then use that with some equations to figure out speeds and a lot of different facts and data that were involved in the actual incident. Normally, we are hired by either an attorney or an individual or an insurance company to basically let them know exactly what happened, so that they'll know, if they were at fault or another person was at fault. And the biggest thing, 2 biggest things in our field in this area are 100% honesty and integrity, and competency in being able to figure out the things that we need to figure out. If we have those 2 things, then we're going in the right direction.
I figure those would be tremendously important for anything like that, to be hired by attorneys, investigators, stuff like that. So as far as starting this and kind of moving forward with your business there, was there more of a, for a lot of people, entrepreneurs, they see a void in, they see a need and they work to fill that. And then others that I've talked to say it was just a matter of like, I had no idea. I felt called to this, almost like a higher power. We're talking about kind of, this faith-based business decisions on that. Was it more of one or the other, or was it kind of a combination of things?
I've always felt 100% that God just took me where he knew I had to be. I had no dreams for years to become a forensic engineer. Never even knew what it was until really the day before I went on the first interview to work in that field. So, I didn't know where I was going, but he knew where I was going, I'm sure.
It's always interesting to kind of submit yourself to his timing as much as we as humans want to control, especially men want to control situations, control things, and feel like, we're going to be okay as long as we can control it. And then just say, what the heck is forensic engineering? I have no idea what it's like. With what I did doing this, same thing. I have no idea how
Yeah.
to start a podcast. I still half the time have no idea what I'm doing. It's just having a conversation and then we'll see what comes of it. It was a challenge and I'm like, all right, let's do it. So as
Right
far
on.
as surprises in the last 12 months then there, Ed, what's the biggest surprise you've seen in the last 12 months aside from the obvious global pandemic? We're going to omit that one. And why would you say, your answer is what you gave?
The surprises. Now, when you say surprises, are you talking about business-wise or life-wise or any kind of wise?
Whatever comes to mind. Again, God's guiding your answer. If your biggest surprises come in life, your kids all of a sudden, did something and you're like, wow, all three of them did this, or if it's more of a business surprise, what is that?
So here's a surprise. I mean, it's all rolls into one, but I have I stumbled across a friend who was on this weight loss program. And so I said, hey, that's interesting. She posted it on Facebook, actually. I said, well, what are you doing? So next thing you know, I'm on it. And so I lost 30 pounds in the last few months. And I'm like, wow, was I really that bad off? I didn't realize it until until I'm on this end of it. And all in concert with that, all within the same time frame, I have this weird thing going on with my eye, where my left eye is permanently dilated, and the doctors can't figure it out. I've been getting MRIs and CAT scans and seeing neurologists, and we're all trying to wrap our heads around it. And there's, if you Google it, you either everything's totally fine, it's nothing, or on the other extreme, you're going to die in 2 weeks. So
this is why we don't go to WebMD.
Exactly. Yeah. So many people have corrected me on that now that I've done it. But I'm trying to get that route, figured out, and started having blood tests and different things like that. And there's some weirdness going on with me, and I guess it made me realize, wow, I'm not invincible. There's actually somebody here. Not that I didn't already know that, but it kind of brought it front and center.
I wonder how they're, aside from the weight loss or the eye thing, I wonder if whatever, I'm assuming it's some sort of a supplement, some sort of a weight loss program. We don't need to go into specifics on it, but I always wonder sometimes, and I've got a couple businesses that are in similar too, where I would say I did about a year's worth of research and testimonial investigation stuff before I was like, yeah, this is something I can get behind. You got to wonder on lifestyle, what you're currently doing when you start something like that, and how, maybe quickly that happened, if they're somehow tied together and it's going to eventually fix itself. I hope that you have a lot more than 2 weeks. I really, truly do. I pray that's a very unfortunate situation. I just wonder how that, having this experience of the weight loss, possibly the more energy, maybe there's better sleep attributed to that kind of thing, but also you have this eye thing. Like, how has that changed aside from realizing that you're not invincible? Like, have you started doing other things differently in that way? Has it kind of changed how you approach every morning with your family, with your work?
I definitely have done a number of things to get my health back to where it needs to be. I was always very much into being healthy and fit and lifting weights and all that up until probably 10, 12 years ago, when I was just kind of knee deep in the middle of kids and trying to start the business and, working a lot for other people. And so many things were going on that I didn't realize I had let things get out of hand.
Yeah, life just happened.
Oh yeah. I don't know how I'm 49 now, and I can't even tell you how that happened.
Just everything happened around you and you just kept getting older, and all of a sudden one day you woke up, you're like, oh man, 50 is right next door. So tell me about a time here, or maybe explain something, how your faith has directly affected and influenced your business decisions in the last year.
One of the things that I think faith has always guided me to is to treat others how I want to be treated. And to be honest with you, sometimes I go overboard and I treat them better than I would even expect to be treated. And I do that with clients. I do that with people who work with me. I try to do that because I know that that's inherently who I am. That's inherently how I like to be. But I also know that it's going to come back to me. Someone may say, well, you're not billing them enough for that. Or, hey, you're doing too much for them. Well, you know what? It's what makes me happy. It's what makes them happy. Don't worry about it. It'll all balance itself out in the end.
Have you seen that influence, for lack of a better term, trickle down into your children, and maybe into your wife as well? Like they're seeing you do these things. Are you recognizing that they're doing these as well, or
Um,
maybe you're hearing from it from other parents,
yeah,
other adults, the teachers, that kind of thing? Those proud
yeah,
papa moments.
I would say so. The three of my children are all three 100% different from one another. They're extremely different people, which makes raising them hard because you can't, you know, one does something good, and you're like, wow, I must have been a good parent. And the other one schemes for different ones. So, but yeah, I definitely see there are there are definitely some of those influences. Not as much in all of them as there are in others, but I do see it.
Okay. So when you're kind of closing in on time here, I got another one coming up here. I want to be mindful of your time too. You've been very gracious with your time. I got a couple more questions to ask here. We had to kind of bump over a few more. We can always grab a part two if you feel like it's necessary, and we'll see what the viewers say on this one. Give me three people there, Ed, your top three people, if you can come up with them, who influenced you the most in your life, whether it was as a child in making personal life decisions, it was making business decisions, maybe it was something to do with your military experience, which I personally would like to touch more on that, but due to time, we might have to revisit that another time. So who are your top three influences? And it could even be somebody that you watch every day. Maybe you watch one of our social media influencers every day and they get your day started off right.
In life.
Mm-hmm.
Three influences in life. You would think that I would have that at the tip of my fingers, but
I always love this question because if you
yeah,
asked me, I'd probably be in the same boat. And everybody I've asked, they're kind of like, I know one or two. The third one's hard. So
yeah. So I have a sister who's had a lot of challenges through life. She's even lost a child not in the recent years, and nothing stops her. Nothing brings her down. And I don't know how. She's also a single mom. I don't know how she does it. And every time I think, wow, I'm in a bad place, I'm like, I'm not, she's had it much worse and she's just driven right through it. And that's how she does. So that would be a definite one of three. More on the business side, I had a boss in Houston. He was a leader of our engineering group at a manufacturing facility, but he was also very entrepreneurial. He made this company, and it's now probably $150 million a year company. I feel like without him, the company would, I'm not going to say it wouldn't still be around, but it would not be what it is today. And he was the guy who just gave us the reins and said, hey, you have an idea, you do it, you bring it to the forefront, you develop it, you make it happen. And he was very supportive of everything we did. He came up with a sign that said, whether you're the GOAT or the hero, you're still responsible. So whether you messed everything up and became the GOAT, AKA scapegoat, or whether you're the one who saved the world, you're responsible for how it turns out. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like a major fostering creativity in that.
Yeah. So obviously none of us wanted to be the GOATs. So so I'm trying to think there for a third person. I would just probably have to say my parents. I would just say the both of them. I'm fortunate to still have both of them. They're in their 80s. And, they were kind of like the yin yang. one was, I'm not saying one was bad, one was good, but they were pretty opposite one another in personality and drive. And so I got a little bit of each of them. They say
That's awesome.
opposites attract. So obviously it worked out. They've been married over 60 years now. So.
That's awesome. I love hearing stories like that. Just that length, 60 years of marriage is incredible. Incredible. Yes, yes. So I guess another question popped into my head there. I know we haven't divin. I don't know the word. We haven't gone headfirst into too much of faith in that. We touched on it a little bit. Do you have a favorite verse, favorite scripture? Do you have anything that really kind of brings you out of it?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably a typical one, but yeah, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil.
Nice.
And every now and then I get a little cocky and say, because I was in the cavalry, right, when I was in the army. And, in the army and the cavalry, they would say, because I'm the baddest person in the valley. And I always think back to that, but that's not how I truly feel. But that's, I'm sure you've heard that version before.
Yep. Very cool. So if you could step into my shoes here, Ed, and what would you have asked yourself that I didn't? I forgot to, it wasn't on my mind or whatever. What would you feel people would want to know about you? A question that I could ask you and you could give an answer that's like, hey, this is relevant.
I would say maybe what are your plans for the future? What would you do? Basically, one thing I always think about is what would I do if money were no object, if my businesses were running on their own autonomously, and that I had to just put a little bit into them every week to keep them rolling. That's things that I think about. Those are the things that kind of drive me to try to get where I'm going.
So what's your answer? I mean, if money were no object, what are the kind of things you would do, and what does your future look like? What do you see that?
Well, as of right now, I'm not actually seeing it in my head because I guess my faith in this is not really where it should be, but I hope to one day be able to promote charities, give time, finances, whatever else I can to certain needs out there for the community, for certain people, certain groups of people who may be able to benefit from someone who can help them out.
It's a good answer. I love that answer. As far as people connecting with you here, I don't know if your business is on social media. I know that you're personally on social media. That's how we connected, but I don't know if there's you got a website, you're on Facebook business, you're on LinkedIn or anything. How can, not that you work with the private sector and like I would hire you for anything, but how can people find out more about you, connect with you, get a little bit more insight, and maybe they're inspired to reach out to you? How can people do that online?
So there's LinkedIn, there's our website, which is www.pa-e.com. It's
okay.
Pennsylvania Apple-E like engineering, okay. PA-E.com. We do have a Facebook page, but it kind of just doesn't, it just kind of sits there. At one point it was reposting other blog posts that we thought were interesting. We really need to look at it and see where it's at right now. I think it's kind of just sat there for a while and not done much. Of course, I'm on Facebook. That's really it. I think we were doing Twitter a while back, but really stopped. So,
okay.
Say website, Facebook. Those are the two primary.
Awesome.
And LinkedIn.
Facebook, LinkedIn, maybe a little Twitter, and then the website. So I'll make sure to post those up here in the notes so people can reach out to you for whatever reason, hopefully good reason. Yeah. So, Ed, last question here. What do you feel is your purpose on this planet? What do you feel that you were put here to do?
I always felt like I was best at leading by example, not really telling people what to do, but maybe having them just observe and see what I do and maybe try to be more like that. And not that I'm perfect in any way whatsoever, but some of the good things that I do, of course, they could ignore the bad things because that's, they should have the discretion to figure out, oh no, Ed messed up there. I'm not going to do that. But that's kind of what I try to do. I try to make people happy, make people
Okay.
happy and give a good example.
Awesome. Awesome. Anything you want to say in closing about you, your business, anything like that?
Well, I'm just happy to be here. I hope that we're able to kind of maybe get further down this path toward doing the things I want to do in my future that we talked about a minute ago. And every day I'm trying my best to continue to make changes so that we can better ourselves and get where we're trying to go.
Sounds good. I really appreciate, again, you being on here. We'll make sure that everybody has access to be able to check out the website, hit you up on Facebook, LinkedIn, other resources and anything. So I appreciate you being on here again, Ed. Thanks so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I value getting to know you a little bit better and sharing a little bit of your story. So I hope you have an awesome, awesome rest of your day. Great Wednesday and the rest of the week here as we start out November.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
Great
you.
being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye.